Hello, darkness, my old friend. Hi, I'm Xtreme225, and this is my playthrough of Mega Man X6. Ah, yes, X6. I played through this game a very long time ago, but now I feel the time has come for a replay because now I am going to be playing with the X6 Tweaks patch, which is a fan-made modification that fixes a lot of bad stuff in X6. For those of you who don't know, after X5, it was pretty clear to people that the X series probably should have ended right then and there. However, there was money to be made, and so X6 was rushed out in a very short amount of time compared to the previous games. And so X6 wound up having some very notoriously high difficulty, very frustrating jumps, very poor game design in some places. But I'm one of the guys who has a soft spot for this game because there are some very good points to X6, there are some improvements over X5, and the music is very excellent, and the narrative is actually pretty good for what you'd expect from Mega Man. Of course, that's ruined by a very poor translation, which is one of the things that the Tweaks patch actually fixes. The translation is very, very improved in this mod. So if you would like to experience that for yourself, I recommend downloading the mod and playing it yourself, because I'm going to be skipping all the story segments as usual. And other modifications made by the Tweaks patch include some fixes to some very frustrating parts of the game. The Reploids that you have to rescue to get their power-up parts, they can no longer be lost forever like they could in the original game. And that plus a bunch of other fixes make this a very much more enjoyable experience. Of course, some of the glitches that you could have taken advantage of have been fixed, at least I think they have, so I'm not going to be using any of those. So no guard shell shenanigans, no abusing Ensuizan with Zero. In fact, in this playthrough, I don't think I pick up Zero at all. I'm just not interested anymore. He's got too low defense for him to be usable, in my opinion. Because one of the other things I'm going to do in this playthrough is I'm going to be playing on Extreme mode. This is a higher level of difficulty that they started including starting with X5. And Extreme mode makes X6 even more crazy, if you can believe that. So with the screens flooded with enemies in Extreme mode, Zero is just no longer that viable, I guess. I mean, he's not practical, is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, let's get right into the intro stage. As you know, the intro stage starts you off with the Falcon armor, which has been significantly nerfed from X5. You no longer have the broken flying mechanic, but now you have the ability to charge your special weapons once you get them. And this is not going to be an unarmored X playthrough, by the way. I just want to point that out. X6 is way too difficult for me to do that, so you're going to be seeing a lot of Falcon armor stuff, a lot of charged special weapons, and in fact I would say that X6 is actually more interesting with special weapons, and charged special weapons especially. Like the regular special weapons in this game, they're not that good at all, but the charged versions, that'll be interesting to see. So in this intro stage, there are certain blocks and enemies that can only be damaged with a Z-Saber, which is something that X now has access to for story reasons. But it's not, like, super useful. Some of the enemies in Extreme mode just have way more health than normal, so you're not going to be slashing through enemies very quickly, which I think is fine. X should not be as skilled with the Saber as Zero is. So we're coming to the end of the intro stage already, and I'm taking some intentional damage here, by the way, for reasons that you'll understand as soon as we get to the boss. There's a short scene here with two characters who did not originally have a portrait, but thanks to the Tweaks patch, they now have a portrait, and in fact the various armors X can get also have their own unique portraits. So that's all stuff that is added in by the mod. So thank you, Tweaks patch, you've made this game just a little bit nicer to look at. Alright, so the intro boss. Do not expect anything all that crazy from an intro boss. All you have to do is hit that weird thing that's sending a signal to the boss. Like this. Hit it with the saber, hit it with a charge shot, whatever you want to do. And again, I'm going to be taking some intentional damage because there is actually a second boss after this one. However, much like a Vile from X1, you're not supposed to kill him quite yet. Instead, once you are knocked down to 1 health, then the boss will go away and you can continue on your merry adventure. That was close though. I very narrowly avoided a death there, I think. I don't know how much damage that move from the boss would have done, but there you go. I might have just narrowly avoided an embarrassing death. Of course, if I had actually gotten killed, then I would have just restarted anyways. Oh, look, it's Zero apparently, but he's now purple and pink. Gee, Zero, I didn't think you could get any weirder than you already were, considering that long flowing hair and the weird boob lights in some of the earlier designs that he's had. and apparently some kind of metallic undergarments as well. Which I think you'll notice in a certain picture of him, but let's wait to find out what that is, shall we? So this guy is called High Max, and he's invincible for this first fight with him. So I just get hit once, and that allows the game to proceed. So yes, I took that intentional damage so that this fight would end quicker. I don't want to waste time on it. So with that out of the way, we will now have our usual choice of 8 bosses that we have to beat in order to access the final levels of the game. Of course, since this is a PlayStation X game, there is a way to actually just skip straight to the end if you want, but if you do that, you won't have any weapons or power-ups or other stuff, so I'm just going to clear through all 8 of them as usual. And I mentioned that this game has a much stronger narrative than is normal for an X game. The bosses in this game are actually given backstories, and they tie in really well with the main villain, in my opinion, and even one of X's allies is connected to this villain in an interesting way. So I think that's interesting to talk about. Of course, I'm skipping all the story scenes, so no time for me to talk about that. Let's get to our first boss. And yes, the Tweaks patch adds back in a feature that was cut in the US version of the game. There's actually an announcer to say the boss names, like with X5 as well. What's also interesting about X6 is that this is the only game in this series, I think, where the boss names stayed the same between the Japanese and US versions. Normally there would be changes in the US version to the boss names in order to make them less stupid, but not this time, so we have some very glorious boss names, as you will see. I really hate these Mantis enemies. Those little scythes that they shoot out, they don't, like, disappear after going a certain amount of distance. They can chase you very, very far. But if you just go to the right on this screen, you will find your first armor piece. Now, like in X5, X6 makes it so you have to collect all of the pieces of armor before you're allowed to use that armor. However, the Tweaks patch, again, like the X5 Tweaks patch, makes it so you can select new armors even though you don't have all of the pieces. You just will be missing certain features if you select an incomplete armor. So that's nice. The patch also lowers the amount of souls you have to collect in order to increase your rank. And by soul, I mean the little blue orb that enemy drops. That's going to be a recurring enemy. The game spams it like there's no tomorrow. So I'm just continuing on my merry way, and oh no! Yeah, I wasn't kidding about those scythes. They just track you throughout the entire level. I would love to see if it's possible to get one from the beginning of the stage to go all the way to the end of the stage. So another change that this patch makes is that you might have noticed that there are far less Reploids to rescue than normal. There are normally 16 per stage, but the patch lowers it to 5, and those 5 are the only ones that give you any bonuses when you pick them up, such as heart tanks or bonus parts you can equip later. And it's impossible to lose all this permanently, by the way. In the original game, if one of the Reploids got killed by a nightmare, then you could potentially lose whatever item he was holding permanently. And also in this area, a change that's particular to this stage is that in that room I was just in, they actually lowered the cliff a little bit so that you could slide down slower and see what was below you without having to make a leap of faith. There aren't that many changes to the actual level design of X6 in this patch, but the patch does change some of the most glaring examples of unfair game design, as you will see in the fortress levels in the later parts of the game. So yes, this game loves to spam this Mantis enemy, and on extreme mode they're just everywhere. It's completely nuts. But finally we're up to the boss. One thing that's interesting about X6 is that despite the levels themselves being very, very difficult, most of the bosses are actually really, really easy. Like this first one is the typical chill penguin, you're supposed to kill this guy first boss. But still, Commander Yanmark, not that interesting. He really just showers you with a bunch of aimed bullets, and as somebody who is experienced with bullet hell games, they are really easy to avoid. But I did die to him one time, so that was a bit of editing that you just saw. So just pelt him with charge shots, and his most typical move is to move towards you while firing bullets in your general direction. They are aimed at you, so as long as you are on the move, it should be very easy to avoid them. So just repeat this pattern over and over again. On Extreme Mode, I think there are a couple of additional moves for the bosses to get, but I haven't seen any of them in my recordings quite yet. So as the fight goes on, he will add more and more bullets, like this really changes anything. They're all aimed at you. I mean, I got hit one time, and then he does the move where he just charges straight into you. It's really lazy boss design, if you ask me. He just moves towards you, and that's all he does. Just moves towards you and fires at you. But still, a simple boss to defeat, and he drops a really good weapon, which I'm going to make extensive use of throughout the game. And as I said, X's weapon set in this game isn't too interesting unless you include the charged versions. I don't know if the patch changed any of the weapons at all, but when you include the charged versions of the weapons, there are actually some pretty good ones. So as you will soon see, I now have the blade armor available, however only the leg parts are available. So if I select the blade armor now, it's basically unarmored X but with an air dash, and that's it. So I'm sticking to the Falcon armor for the next stage. Don't worry though, I think I will have to show off the blade armor at some point because it would be really nice to have that air dash in some of the coming stages. I'm not really doing a super 100% playthrough here. I'm not going to collect all of the armors and upgrades or anything because they haven't changed in the patch or anything. They don't change on Extreme mode. I'm just going to pick up the ones that I absolutely think I will need in order to beat this because even with the patch's modifications, Extreme mode is still very much Extreme mode. Anyways, moving on to this next stage, it's actually a really short one if you don't take any of the alternate paths that exist in every stage. I'm not taking any alternate paths quite yet. The alternate paths are where you want to go if you want to unlock 0 and skip to the end of the game right away, but I'm not sure if I would like to do that quite yet. So that little bug you see following me, that's not a normal part of the stage, it's actually the result of a nightmare effect, which is this game's term for ways in which the stage is altered by the order you play them in. So by playing Commander Yanmark first and then moving on to Shield Sheldon, now there's going to be those little bugs flying around me for the duration of the stage, which is incredibly annoying. Most of the nightmare effects range from annoying to, oh my god, why did you do this? And I elected not to turn them off. There's actually a version of the patch that lets you turn off the nightmare effects completely, but I decided not to in order to give myself that extra bit of irritation. I mean, I just feel like they're part of X6's personality. Without the nightmare effects, you don't really get an idea for how crazy this game was back in the day for new players. So as you can see, the gimmick of the stage is reflecting lasers in order to open the doors. I'm going to open the door on the right, which will take us straight to the boss. I told you the stage was short. If you unlock the door on the bottom there, then you will actually access the alternate path, which I'm not doing quite yet. And Shield Sheldon as a boss is, well, he's not that interesting at first, but past half health things get really interesting. And on Extreme mode, he actually goes into his desperation phases much, much quicker than he normally would. So for those of you who played this on normal and thought that Shield Sheldon was very pathetic, well, he still kind of is, but still. So this attack is very easy to avoid, you just dash under the shell, and this attack, you can avoid this attack completely by just staying on the left side. I don't know what the point of it is. He's a lot like Armored Armadillo from X1. Very easy to avoid, arbitrarily lengthens the fight in order to make it more quote-unquote difficult. This move right here is one of his desperation attacks, and it's very annoying as you can see. I'm using the saber here because trying to shoot into the little gaps that the shield has would be very difficult. Much easier to just damage boost and attack him with the saber that way. And this is his second desperation attack. It's much, much easier to hit him while avoiding. I mean, you only have to really worry about being shot at if one of the guard shells is struck by a buster shot. And I don't know what's up with this attack, by the way. It's completely pointless. It does absolutely nothing, and he's invincible for the duration. So here's his desperation move again. And all you have to do is catch him when he's moving from one guard shell to the next. I don't even know why he comes out of the shells. He's completely invincible while he's in there. So coming out of the shell kind of just makes it possible for him to lose. It's very strange. So we get his guard shell weapon, which is unfortunately not as good because I think the tweaks patch fixed the glitches with the guard shell, which I guess is okay. But there's still a way to make use of it, and that will become apparent in the coming stages. So that'll do it for this video. Next up, we will face 3 more bosses and get 3 more weapons. Until that time, I'm Xtreme225, and I'm hoping that this game remains as painless as it has been so far, but it's X6, so don't count on that!